It's 28 minutes past 7 on Morning Report. Well, Jacinda Ardern travelled to Australia at the weekend. At the top of the agenda with Malcolm Turnbull was the issue of the refugees on Manus Island. And Jacinda Ardern joins me now in the Auckland Checkpoint studio because we are live streaming this interview on Facebook and all the other usual platforms. Good morning to you, Prime Minister.
Good morning.
Now, last week on RNZ, we heard from the refugees at the centre, these people with no food, no power, and in many cases no hope, and they said New Zealand was their last hope. What have you been able to achieve for them?
Certainly, part of my intent yesterday was to make sure that Prime Minister Turnbull knew that the offer was a very genuine offer, that New Zealand saw the crisis unfolding, that we took a view that we could be of assistance. We know we cannot resolve the whole problem, though. And that was a point that was really made by Prime Minister Turnbull in response, that there is an agreement between Australia and the United States for 1,250 refugees, which would include both Manus and Nauru, to be resettled. So there is a particular priority from Australia's perspective on that offer. But my point was that we are here and ready, and that we see some urgency around the situation, and it would be our hope that the offer would be taken up.
So, in terms of the American solution, though, do you genuinely believe that that is a realistic resolution to this crisis?
I have no reason not to.
So we are relying on Donald Trump now?
Well, the offer was made some time ago. Some have already been resettled. It's in the order of 50 at this stage. My point I made to Prime Minister Turnbull was that we would be keeping in close touch. If we don't see progress, I will be going back again and saying that that offer still remains. And as I say, there is urgency around this. Again, 150 doesn't solve the problem, but at least it would provide relief for a portion of those who are in this situation.
Why not take 600?
Simply, we don't have the capacity in our resettlement process. You would want to make sure that we resettle properly, and we do have some limitations on how well we can do that job.
Okay, when you say you'll wait to see when progress is made, what deadline and time frame have you put on that?
Oh, for me, it's a personal deadline. It's not something I've set out with the Prime Minister. But of course, even as...
So what's your personal deadline?
Oh, of course, I would hope that we'd see some resolution over the coming weeks, or at least the start of some resolution. But that's not that again. We are, of course, countries sitting on the periphery of this who has made an offer. I can absolutely understand why Australia wants to prioritise a resolution that will substantively resolve the issue. And
but will it really, though? Because Donald Trump, as you're well aware, called this a dumb deal. Dumb deal is a direct quote. He said it was the worst deal ever. He said he would get killed politically. He said Australia was seeking to, quote, export the next Boston bombers. I've read 25 that they've taken. You say 50. It's well shy of 1,250. Do you really expect Donald Trump to solve this for us?
At the same time, look, I never want to place any expectations on other world leaders to solve other issues generally. But so that's why our offer is there. And I'm certainly not saying because the United States has made an offer that ours doesn't exist. It does. My hope would be that they'd be taken at the same time. But I have to accept that Prime Minister Turnbull is prioritising the agreement that substantially resolves the issue at this point.
What do you think about Australia's treatment of these people?
Every time I've spoken about this, I have added the caveat that New Zealand is not in this situation. We are not having to deal with boat people making it to New Zealand. And that at the moment we've had, I think, 1,000 days free of people taking to boats to try and make it to Australia, which risks their lives. I agree that those who are the instigators of trying to exploit people's fear and vulnerability by encouraging them to take to the seas should be prosecuted and should be pursued, because these people are exploiting vulnerable refugees.
But I'm asking what you think of Australia's treatment.
When it comes to Manus Island, I have been really really specific in my description. I think there is a human face to this, which is why we have continually, since we've taken office,
but it's cool. Of course there's a human face. I mean, these are human beings.
Would I have gone to Australia and made my first order of priority Manus if I didn't think it needed to be resolved?
I'm asking you quite simply what you think of Australia's treatment of these people.
I think the situation they're in now, it cannot continue, which is why we've made the offer.
Okay, will you condemn or criticise it though?
Well, I think that is
That's
clearly,
as far as you're willing to go?
Well, I think that's a clear statement. The fact that the first thing I raised was Manus, I think demonstrates our collective position. At the same time, I will reiterate, we are not in the same situation Australia is. So it's one thing for us to sit and make those assessments without having to be in the same situation. But all I can do is face the here and now, and this is not a situation anyone wants to continue.
So just in simple terms then, what do you think of Australia's treatment of these people?
Obviously New Zealand wouldn't have undertaken a policy in that way, but we're also not in that position.
Malcolm Turnbull said at the weekend, quote, New Zealand obviously benefits from the strong border protection policies that we have, close quote. Do you agree with that?
The point that the Prime Minister was making is that there are some who are currently in the processing centres who have said that their ultimate destination was New Zealand.
So you agree that we benefit from Australia's policy in this regard?
I think at the moment it's a combination of both the fact that they are primarily the ones undertaking that work to act as a deterrent, not just in the seas, but at the origin, at the source, making a clear point that if you're a refugee, the best way to make sure that you're resettled is through that formal refugee resettlement process rather than risking one's life. And the people who encourage people to risk their lives on those oceans should be in prison. They are criminals.
Just a couple of quick final points on trade. The TPP, I know it came up. Did you tell Malcolm Turnbull that you were hoping to be able to be in a position to sign the TPP?
I told him, as I've said publicly, I said the same term as I've said openly, that we've inherited a dog. The ISDS clauses are not in New Zealand's best interest.
The TPP's a dog?
The ISDS clauses are, and we've been clear on that.
So you won't sign the TPP?
If you let me finish. If you let me finish, those clauses aren't in New Zealand's best interest. We have always maintained that any negotiator's job is to pursue the things that are, which, let's be clear, the Japan elements of the deal do present a good deal for our exporters. But at the same time, it's our job to try and weed out the bits that aren't a good deal.
Okay, so are you saying that you won't sign?
So you're asking me whether I sat down with Malcolm Turnbull and gave away our negotiating position?
No,
absolutely not.
I'm fascinated that you just called it a dog.
The ISDS clauses are,
okay, so
and we inherited them.
And let's go to the next question from that. Will you sign a TPP that includes ISDS clauses?
I have said from the beginning that we're working very, very hard to improve New Zealand's position because the last government didn't. We made that a priority with our negotiators. We changed their mandate as soon as we came in. We are seeking to put New Zealand in a much better position, but I have always said it will be hard. We're at the final stages of negotiation. So we're doing what we can with what the government left us. But our view is that they did a bad job when it comes to the ISDS clauses.
Final question. Matt Nippert in the Herald in the last few days has reported that there was a rebuke from the European Union Ambassador Bernard Savage over the New Zealand first priority to have a Russia-Kazakhstan trade deal. He said it would be viewed in a, quote, very negative light, and the implication was that it could put some sort of EU trade deal at risk. Have you spoken to Mr Peters about that?
Not directly. I have spoken to our trade spokesperson. I believe that there may be somewhat blowing out of proportion of what the ambassador remarks.
So he didn't say anything like that?
My understanding is it's not quite as it's being reported. But look, if there's any inference here or assumption that we are prioritising any deal over the EU focus that we have, then that would be incorrect.
Have you discussed Winston Peters' interest in the Russia deal with Mr Peters since the coalition was formed?
No, I think the issue's being overplayed.
OK. Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate you coming into the studio here in Auckland. We'll better get on to the news with Nicola Wright.
The Prime Minister says if there is